paint job is going to be quite risky at this point, but whatever. I'm just going to keep on pushing through and see how it works.
Okay, now the paint job is done, I know that there's gonna be issues, but let's just see how it looks like in the sun.
Okay. Color is nice and uniform. I got a couple of drips, right? Nothing that can't be sanded out. Jams turned out okay. Jams turned out all right. A couple more drips here. You can sand those out pretty easily. We'll polish her up. Ah, not bad. As you can see here, I did already start doing a little bit of sanding on some of the tougher drips, or some of the bigger drips, and I think it's actually going to turn out okay. There was a really bad one here. This is really the mother load drips. I gotta fix that. You can see right there. Yeah, some pretty bad drips there. I know. But the rest of the car actually turned out pretty nice. Pretty happy with the roof. Turned out great. You can see here, this stuff fell, right? I'm gonna review the paint booth in a few minutes, but yeah. Paint turned out good on the hood. Front fender, a lot more inclusions. There are a lot more inclusions on this piece than there were when I did the individual pieces. No doubt about that. A lot more inclusions, a lot more issues. But I can work with this though. I can work with this. It's not ideal, but I can work with it. I don't know if you can see it here, but there are issues here. There are tiny little specks of like contamination inside the paint, or at least it looks like it's inside the clear coat actually, because I made sure the base coat was perfect. But you can see there are little inclusions here. So what I did was I actually sanded off a section of that to see what it would look like, and man, is it gonna turn out smooth. So let's review the paint booth really quick and give you my honest opinion on the paint booth. Overall, not happy with the paint booth at all. There were issues, the air pressure issues, as you can see here. There were tons of like little areas where the pressured air from the main motor was escaping and coming out, and then this stuff was basically dropping down on the car as I was painting. This stuff fell, right? I mean, it's all over the place. I mean, you can see every single little hole where air is escaping from the high pressure is just basically coming through. I don't know why there's paint and clear coat coming through there, but there is. Look at it up there too. So that's the first thing I do not like about this booth. Second thing, it is a positive pressure booth, which really does not get the fumes out nearly in time. In fact, what happens is everything kind of settles in the air, as you saw from some of my time lapses that were then sped up in the video. Everything is just hovering in the air. And that's terrible for a paint job, because that means that all that specks of dust just kind of settles on the car over time, and then that gives it that rough finish. I never got that rough finish when I did the paint, when I did those pieces over there with the fans just exhausting out. So I'm doing the rear bumper, and I know it's gonna end up turning out better than the car. This booth really doesn't serve much of a purpose if those two things are resident. It doesn't evacuate the fumes in time, and it doesn't get rid of, and it actually creates dust that comes down. So overall, I'm very disappointed in the way this booth performed when you're putting in a much larger car.
To first start sanding clear coat, you need at least 1,000 grit. So these are 1,000 grit hook and loop sanding discs. We have 1,000 grit, then we have 2,000 grit, then we have 3,000 grit. I'm going to be using a foam backed pad, a very soft pad, hook and loop, goes right onto the hook and loop of any orbital sander. This is a Milwaukee, this is a 5-inch orbital sander. We have a 6-inch pad. That's not that big of a deal. We just put the pad on the orbital and we can still use it. As you can see, there's a lot of give on the edges, but that's okay. Now the reason that you want to use a polished pad is primarily to prevent any type of sharp edge contact. It really smooths out by having all the give of that foam. And that's really important when you're doing wet sanding because you don't want to go through the wet sand and through the base and onto the primer side. So let's take these out, let's put them on the trunk. We'll do a quick test area and I'll show you what this really could look like in the sun. Okay, we're gonna use this little area here as our test bed. First, you wanna clean it off. Use a terry cloth towel, just kind of wipe it off, okay? And then you want to use your 1,000 grit paper, stick it right onto your pad like this. This is 1,000, right? Just like that. And then all you want to do is lightly go over, don't use too much pressure, and just go up and down. You'll see dry sanding is the way to go here. The dry sanding, you can wet sand too, but I prefer dry sanding because you can see everything come up. You have a little bit better control. With the wet sanding, you don't have as good control. I like to wet sand by hand, which is when I'm doing things like controlling drips and things like that. I like to wet sand to ease the friction. So let's get this guy in the middle here. And let's get started. So you can see how a lot of the contamination is starting to reveal itself. And we have to sand all that out. So kind of go up and down using moderate pressure. Right? Get it all down. Right here in particular, if I just keep on kind of sanding that off, it will smooth itself out. And let's go to 2,000. Just a light coat of the 2,000 is all you need. And let's go to 3,000. Now I'm sanding it down to 3,000. Technically 3M suggests you should go to 5,000. I don't have 5,000 paper right now, so I'm only going to demonstrate to 3,000 before we go to the polish. And I'm going to tell you the results are really, really dramatic. And when I do the final sanding of this car, I'm actually going to go to 5,000, so I'm not really too worried about it, but just want to make sure that I at least demonstrate with 3,000 how good it can look. And then you'll see, obviously, with 5,000, how much better it'll look when I'm done. Now this is called the 3M Perfect It kit. It basically comes in a 3-stage kit. The first stage is your machine compound, or your rubbing compound. That's accompanied by the white pad, white cap. Black pad is your machine polish stage. That's your second stage. And then your third is your final polish stage. That's the light blue with the light blue final machine polish. What we're gonna do is we're gonna use an orbital polisher. Actually, it's not an orbital. This is a regular cutting wheel, okay? And we're gonna be using 3 stages. We're gonna be using stage 1200 RPM for stage 1, then 1700 RPM for stage 2, 1800 RPM for stage 3. I'm gonna be applying a little bit of it, and then we're gonna be basically just be rubbing it in. This should take about 5 minutes to finish this little spot. We'll get to see what the results are. You want to have this flat as possible. Don't go edge like that or it's gonna cut too deep into it and you might induce too much heat. Nice and easy, nice and flat. Nice and slow. Now we rub it off with a terry cloth towel, a clean terry cloth towel. Higher RPM here. When you're using this polisher, you really want to go and play against the turn. This turns clockwise, so as you're polishing, you need to make sure that you are pushing against that and effectively using the pad to cut through the clear coat. You really want it to heat up that clear coat and smooth it over like glass. We're just about done here. I'll wipe it off and we'll take a closer look. Just remember, I did not sand this down with 5,000 grit like they recommend. I sanded it down with 3,000. So I could have gone a little bit more to get those tiny, minute scratches out, but I didn't have it. So let's take a look. There you go. Look at that, huh? It's kind of hard to show it here. It really is. I mean, the color is absolutely gorgeous in the sun. Let's try this. Let's try it this way. How's that, huh? I mean, honestly, just looking at it, I don't think it could have turned out any better, to be honest with you. So basically, that's what I need to do to the entire car, right? But there are drips. There's clear coat drips. And we need to handle those clear coat drips on a case-by-case basis. As you can see, I've sanded a lot of them down already, and I didn't go through the paint, which is great because it proves that I actually put on enough clear coat in order to make this work. So what I want to do now is demonstrate to you how to go through and sand down a clear coat run. The runs are really important. It happens to everybody, especially us DIYers. Let's go through and talk about how to sand off a run. In this next section, I want to teach you how to remove clear coat runs using nothing more than some sandpaper and using BONDO or polyester filler as an agent to help gauge how hard you should sand before you're going to end up going through that clear coat into the paint layer. Our subject today is the front bumper. As you can see here, there are some clear coat runs right along here. See where it fits in the whole grand scheme of things. And what we're gonna do is BONDO over this, and we're gonna start sanding it down with 600 grit. Now, why are we using the BONDO? Well, the BONDO is gonna be a really good visual indicator of how deep you're sanding. Once you've sanded through all the BONDO and there's none left, that means that you've gone through the clear coat. Now, as you have a clear coat, has basically a bump in, a run is a bump in the clear coat. And when you put the BONDO over that, you're gonna start sanding down in it a nice even layer. And as you're sanding that BONDO down, you're gonna start to see that run reveal itself. And as it reveals itself, you know to continue to sand. But if you keep on sanding and the BONDO that's on the either side of that run is no longer visible, that's when you should stop sanding down the run. Okay, so let's mix our clear coat here. Now we apply it over. Perfect. Okay, now that it's dried, we take our sanding pad, wrap the 600 grit paper around it just like that. Make sure it's wet, and we just start sanding. And you could do this by machine if you want, but I don't recommend it because you can certainly burn through the paint pretty quickly if you're not careful. Now you can see here that the clear coat is already starting to show through here. The run's starting to show through a little bit. Some of the high points. A couple more high points coming through right here. Let's go into a time lapse. As you can see, most people who feel with their hands would be like, wow, that feels really good. Those runs must be gone. And you can see that there still is some BONDO still showing, which means that there's still runs around that BONDO and you need to smooth it out completely. So this is a really, really good method of identifying how far you need to sand in order to get these runs off. So you have to be really careful when you get toward the end of a project like this where you're sanding down right at the bottom because you really could go through the clear coat into the paint if you're not careful. So you have to be really careful and do it slowly. Let's finish her up and we'll see how it looks like when we're done. All right, guys, that just about does it for fixing clear coat runs. We did some polishing and we revealed the car. We got a couple more videos that are going to be coming out on the E31 S85 within the next month, but we are going to be shifting our way over to our next project in about a week. So stand by for that. It's going to be an awesome LT1 swapped E something, not sure what, but I'm really excited to share it with you and go through another cool full-on engine swap with you guys. I'll be working on E31 stuff in parallel, as you probably are aware. It's going to take a while, but I do want to get this thing done by spring of next year. So still a lot of work left to do, but I made really good headway on the paint and I'm very happy about that. Guys, my name is Frank Macaluso. I am out of here from Garageaholic. Take it easy, guys. Later.